Yeah.
Okay, sir. Good evening and welcome to the next session. Thank you, sir, for your kindful session. So we can start now, sir.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Today's topic is regarding the pediatric epilepsy syndromes. Briefly, my outline of the talk will be I cover the most important epileptic syndromes. So, what I want to say is, in answering or in recognizing epileptic syndrome, you need to identify the age of the onset of the epilepsy and the type of the seizure the patient is having. And the third important thing is the EEG abnormality, and next is the imaging. So, in every question, whenever you are dealing with pediatric epilepsy syndromes, look for the age of the onset, the type of the seizures, and the EEG abnormality and the imaging one. So this outline will be important epilepsy syndromes, and then I will highlight all the important EEG findings, and then drug of choice in various epilepsies, and then some practice MCQs. So coming to the epilepsy syndrome, as I already mentioned, epileptic syndrome means the patient must be having more than just one type of a seizure. So as per the definition, it's the disorder is characterized by the cluster of signs and symptoms occurring together, which includes type of the seizure, etiology, precipitating factors, age of the onset, severity, chronicity, the circadian cycling, and the prognosis. So these are the, according to the age of the onset, electroclinical syndromes by the age of onset. First is the neonatal period. We have three important syndromes: benign familial neonatal epilepsy, early myoclonic epilepsy, and the Ohtahara syndrome. Next is the infancy. We deal with the West syndrome and the Dravet syndrome mostly. Again, benign infantile epilepsy, benign familial infantile epilepsy, and epilepsy in infancy with migrating focal seizures. And childhood, the various types of seizures. Don't worry about the various types of syndromes. We'll deal with the most important ones today. Okay. Again, the childhood, the important ones are the Lennox-Gastaut and the Landau-Kleffner and Panetopolis syndrome. And in the adolescent, there are various idiopathic generalized epilepsies like juvenile absence, juvenile myoclonic epilepsy, and also progressive myoclonic epilepsies. Okay. So first coming to the neonatal epilepsies. So we have three important neonatal epilepsies. The first one is the benign familial neonatal epilepsy. Usually the onset is in the first week, and the patient usually presents with the focal clonic seizures. They can become generalized or apneic. And what is important in this is this benign familial neonatal epilepsy. It will manifest in the first week, and within 2 years they go off naturally. So there is no specific treatment. Usually the spontaneous recovery occurs with this benign familial neonatal epilepsy. And in the benign, usually in the neonatal epilepsies, there is a classic EEG pattern, it's a theta point alternate pattern. Whenever you see the EEG, observe here, this is one epoch. EEG, what is, each page we call it as epoch. So all the discharges which are recorded on the right side, it is indicated by the even numbers. Recordings from the left side indicated by the odd numbers. So here O1 is from the occipital and P3 is from the parietal, that is from the left side, and again F4 is the frontal, C4 again this is from the right side. Even numbers are from the right side, and again this is from the even numbers is from the right side, and odd numbers are from the left side. If you see here again, like in the ECG, you have EQRS waves. In EEG, we have theta, delta, alpha, beta waves. So this in neonatal epilepsies usually, again in a type presentation, you will observe a different technology. Whenever you see the EEG, only two things are important. One is the location from where the seizures are coming. So it can be generalized, focal, or multifocal. That is generalized, lateralized, focal, or multifocal. Whereas another important is pattern. Whether the pattern is the periodic pattern or rhythmic pattern or cyclical pattern. Here, this neonatal epilepsies usually get the theta point alternate pattern. If you observe here, this hospital region from the left side, there are some spikes which you notice, which are not similarly present on the right side. So this spike waves intermix with the theta pattern. Again, similar waves you can see here in the left frontal region. Okay, so this is the theta point to alternate pattern is classically seen in neonatal epilepsy. This is the benign familial neonatal epilepsy. Next is the early myoclonic encephalopathy in the neonatal epilepsies. The second one is the early myoclonic encephalopathy. again, this is important to recognize because many inborn errors of metabolism, example is glycine encephalopathy, presents with this erratic myoclonus. What is erratic myoclonus? Erratic myoclonus is what is myoclonus? Myoclonus is nothing but jugs. So erratic myoclonus is patient having jugs from multiple sites, like the patient is having jugs from the face, jugs from the face. So patient is having multiple jerks. So initially the patient is having jerks in one region, that is in the face, and again it is spreading to rapidly to the limbs. And usually these erratic myoclonus is present before 3 months. Why it is important to recognize? Because these early myoclonic encephalopathy patients, if you see the EEG, they typically have this suppression burst pattern. Are you able to? Is it audible?
Sir, a bit it is difficult, sir.
What?
Not clearly audible, sir.
Not clearly audible.
Yes, sir.
Is it clear now?
Yes, sir, it is clear.
Okay. So first, in the neonatal epilepsies, first we dealt with the benign familial neonatal epilepsy. Next is the early myoclonic encephalopathy. Throughout this presentation, just observe the words which are highlighted. These are the important things for clinching the diagnosis. Any disturbance, Nigam?
No, sir, now it's clear.
Okay, fine. So erratic myoclonus is very classic of early myoclonic encephalopathy, and developmental arrest is seen, and suppression burst EEG pattern is seen. Usually this early myoclonic encephalopathy is associated with inborn errors of metabolism, especially this glycine encephalopathy. If you see this EEG, this EEG is classically showing the suppression burst pattern. If you see, follow my arrow, these are all the bursts you see. You see this burst, and then there is a suppression, and again there is a burst and then suppression. What is classical of this burst suppression pattern? You see in many epilepsies, you see this burst suppression pattern. In the neonates, typically this early myoclonic encephalopathy, and also next we deal with the Ohtahara syndrome. In both these cases, you see the burst suppression pattern. What is classical is, in this early myoclonic epilepsy, we have the short burst and the long periods of the interburst. That means in between the burst, we have very long interburst interval, which is differentiating from this Ohtahara syndrome. Next, we deal with this Ohtahara syndrome. In Ohtahara syndrome, we have longer burst and the shorter interburst interval. So this burst suppression pattern is seen with both early myoclonic encephalopathy and the Ohtahara syndrome. This is Ohtahara syndrome. Again, in previous early myoclonic encephalopathy, we have this typical erratic myoclonus, that is myoclonus originating from the one region and it is spreading to the other region. Whereas this Ohtahara syndrome patients presents in the first 3 months with the tonic spasms. So tonic spasms with the behavioral arrest with suppression burst EEG pattern in the first 3 months. Think of Ohtahara syndrome. Again, you need to understand this Ohtahara syndrome is very important, because this Ohtahara syndrome, during the natural course of the history, Ohtahara syndrome patients progress to the West syndrome, and this West syndrome patients progress to the Lennox-Gastaut. So this Ohtahara syndrome, West syndrome, and Lennox-Gastaut, this is all the natural course of this disease. So identifying this Ohtahara syndrome early during the first 3 months is very important, so that we can give the prognosis to the patient, and we can adequately treat this patient. Even though it is refractory to the anti-epileptic therapies, this Ohtahara syndrome frequently progresses to West syndrome, where there we get the infantile spasms. They are responsive to some medications like ACTH and corticosteroids. Okay, so this identifying in the early stages, these patterns is important. So as I already mentioned, this should be distinguished from the early myoclonic epilepsy by the absence of erratic myoclonus and the presence of tonic spasms at the onset. Usually, remember, Ohtahara syndrome patients have the frequent structural lesions, whereas early myoclonic epilepsy patients have the underlying metabolic abnormality. So metabolic abnormality, that is like inborn errors of metabolism. So Ohtahara syndrome patients have the structural lesions. Early myoclonic epilepsy patients have the metabolic abnormality. So if you see this, again, EEG pattern, as I already mentioned, they have the suppression, there is burst suppression pattern. Here you see the longer burst and the shorter interburst interval. If you see the image, as I already mentioned, this Ohtahara syndrome patients have structural lesions. Here, if you follow this arrow mark, there is no corpus callosum, and there is a this is schizencephaly, and there is a diffuse atrophy seen, and also there is hydrocephalus you notice here. So there is a hydrocephalus, there is an absence of the corpus callosum, and there is schizencephaly. So multiple structural abnormalities is usually presence, underlying multiple structural abnormalities are present in Ohtahara syndrome. Next is the West syndrome. So now we completed this neonatal epileptic syndromes. So benign familial epilepsies. First one is the benign. Next is the Ohtahara syndrome, and next is the early myoclonic encephalopathy. And coming to this infantile, this is West syndrome. Again, every word about the West syndrome is important because this is a very frequently asked questions in AIIMS and other exams. Even clinically, we need to recognize this West syndrome patient because we need to follow up these patients for quite long. So usually the West syndrome patients, as I already mentioned, the onset is below 1 year. They peak by the 4 to 7 months. How will you recognize West syndrome? There is a triad in West syndrome, that is cluster of spasms, that is infantile spasms, and there is a developmental and arrest, and next is the hypsarrhythmia. This is the triad of West syndrome: cluster of spasms, developmental arrest, and hypsarrhythmia interrectal EEG pattern. How will you recognize cluster of spasms? Usually infantile spasm duration is 0.2 to 2 seconds, and very important to recognize this infantile spasm because sometimes the children between the 4 to 6 months, the Morose reflex looks like spasm, and even the child trying to get up from the lying down posture looks like a spasm. So what is characteristic of an infantile spasm is they occur in clusters, that is multiple clusters in a day, sometimes up to 2 to 30 clusters. Again, in each cluster there are multiple spasms. So this cluster of spasms is the characteristic feature of West syndrome. Along with that, there should be a developmental arrest, and next is the interrectal EEG pattern, that is hypsarrhythmia. And again, in the spasms, there are various patterns. There can be flexor spasm, extensor spasms, head, or a combination. What is the most common spasm is flexor extensor spasm is the most common type. So here, 3 important MCQs. West syndrome, there is a triad is cluster of spasms, infantile spasms, and developmental arrest and hypsarrhythmia interrectal EEG pattern. Most common infantile spasm is the flexor extensor type. Usually, it is refractory to the anti-epileptic therapies. So if you see this hypsarrhythmia, whenever if you see an EEG, so if you see this bizarre chaotic pattern, so if you see these large waves, the background is very irregular and chaotic, and you see the multiple spikes, but there is no exact focus. You are finding multiple spikes, chaotic background, that is activity is very bizarre. This is very classic of hypsarrhythmia. Again, if you see this image, there is an atrophy, that is, and again there is a hyperintensity noted here. So usually the perinatal insults like hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy, these patients land up into this West syndrome. So important MCQs in relation to the West syndrome is the triad of the West syndrome, that is infantile spasm, developmental arrest, and the classical EEG, that is hypsarrhythmia, that is chaotic, very bizarre chaotic EEG and a large amplitude EEGs. Okay. Next is the febrile seizures plus. So as we already know, these febrile seizures are common between the ages of 6 months to 5 years. Why it is important, this febrile seizures plus? It is important to identify the febrile seizures plus. So when will you think of febrile seizures plus? Whenever the patient is having between the seizures between 3 to 6 months, that is generalized, usually the febrile seizures are generalized tonic-clonic seizures. If the child is having febrile seizures beyond the age of 6 years, and if the patient is having febrile seizures with some atypical features, then you should think of febrile seizures plus. And what are the associated mutations? That is sodium channel 1A mutations are associated with febrile seizures plus. So important points are onset between 3 to 6 years. So the continuation of febrile ETCS beyond the age of 6 years, you should think of febrile seizures plus. Usually they have a favorable outcome. Mutations are sodium channel 1A. The mutations of the sodium channel gene are present. Next is the Panetopolis syndrome. Again, in the infants, Panetopolis syndrome is important because these are the only seizures. I mean, there are only 2 types of seizures which have an occipital onset. That is, one is Panetopolis syndrome, and one is the gestalt epilepsy. So gestalt epilepsy and the Panetopolis syndrome both have occipital spikes. Okay, and usually they have acute onset. That is, they have onset between the ages of 3 to 7 years, peak by the age of 5 years. What is the characteristic feature of Panetopolis syndrome is the focal autonomic features. They presents with, so the child presents with the ictal vomiting. During the episode of seizure, they have a ictal vomiting. So this is classic of Panetopolis syndrome. If you do the EEG, interrectal EEG, you get classically the occipital spikes. Okay, Panetopolis syndrome, it is characteristically occipital spikes are present. Onset is between 3 to 7, peak by the age of 5 years. characteristic important point is the focal autonomic features. That is, the patient usually have the seizures. Along with that, they have ictal vomiting. Usually they resolve within 1 to 2 years, and the patients have normal development. So if you see this, as I already mentioned, this is one epoch in the EEG. This one paper, one tracing is epoch, and these are all the occipital spikes. Again, these are all the recordings from the left side, that is from the even numbers. Again, this is recording from the right side, that is the right hemisphere. So if you see this P301, so here you have occipital spikes. Again, this T501 occipital spikes. So occipital spikes are characteristic of Panetopolis syndrome. Next is the Lennox-Gastaut. Again, Lennox-Gastaut is syndrome is an Lennox-Gastaut syndrome is the continuation of this West syndrome. As I already mentioned, Ohtahara syndrome, they progresses to the West, and the West syndrome patients progress to the Lennox-Gastaut. It is a syndrome characterized by the multiple seizure types. So usually this Lennox-Gastaut syndrome have generalized tonic-clonic seizures, atypical febrile seizures, atonic seizures. You name a seizure, those kind of seizures are present in Lennox-Gastaut. What is important is you don't get the focal seizures in Lennox-Gastaut. So Lennox-Gastaut syndrome have generalized tonic-clonic seizures, atypical febrile seizures, atonic seizures, and focal seizures are rare. And if you do the EEG, you get the diffuse slow spike and wave complexes. That is less than 2.5 Hz. Slow spike and wave complexes are characteristically seen in Lennox-Gastaut syndrome. Usually the mental retardation is common. And if you in Lennox-Gastaut syndrome, again, along with this generalized tonic-clonic seizures, on the background they may have this non-convulsive status epilepticus. So usually they have a very bad prognosis. Mental retardation is common with Lennox-Gastaut syndrome. And Lennox-Gastaut syndrome is more common in males. The peak age of onset is between 3 to 5 years. These seizures are usually more frequent during the sleep. And if you do the imaging, this Lennox-Gastaut syndrome have the cortical malformations. If you remember, in the Ohtahara syndrome, I said the patient is having structural lesions. Again, in the progression, West syndrome patients, they have some structural lesions. On progression, again, Lennox-Gastaut syndrome, they have some structural lesions. So basically, the same structural lesions where their the seizure presentations is manifesting differently. Initially, in the neonatal period as Ohtahara, and then as West, and then as Lennox-Gastaut syndrome. So again, I will repeat this. Lennox-Gastaut syndrome is very important. Lennox-Gastaut syndrome is characterized by the multiple types of seizures, that is generalized tonic-clonic seizures, atypical febrile seizures, and atonic seizures. If you do the EEG, we get typical spike and wave complexes, that is less than 2.5 Hz spike and wave complexes, and mental retardation is common in 90% of the patients, and more common in males. Age of onset is between 3 to 5 years, and more frequent during the sleep. Okay, and if you do the imaging, there will be an underlying cortical malformations. And most characteristic feature, if they ask most characteristic seizures in Lennox-Gastaut is tonic seizures. Okay, and these are the high amplitude fast rhythms followed by the polyspikes. If you see this, they are all high amplitude fast rhythms, and after the high amplitude fast rhythms, you get this polyspikes, spike and wave complexes. If you see, this is if you see this line, this dark line, in between these dark lines, these are all the waveforms. Usually in 1 second, there are less than 3, that is 2.5 Hz. Usually there are less than 3. If you follow, in 1 second, it is usually less than 3, that is 2.5. So Lennox-Gastaut syndrome is characterized by the spike and wave complex of frequency less than 2.5 Hz. This is classical EEG showing spike and wave complexes. This is the spike and these are the wave, and this is less than 3, that is 2.5 Hz spike and wave complexes. These spikes, sharps, and slow waves. Usually in EEG we have 3 kinds of waves. That is the morphology. This is all the morphology. So usually the spikes, if you do the calibrator, you see here this is 1 second. In 1 second, usually it is less than 3. These are all the waveforms. Spike waves are having a duration of less than 70 milliseconds. Slow wave, sharp waves are within 70 to 200 milliseconds, and slow waves are more than 200. No need to remember, just for your understanding sake I am saying. In the EEG, we have 3 kinds of waves. Whether it can be spike waves, it can be sharp waves, it can be slow waves. In this Lennox-Gastaut syndrome, we have typically less than 2.5 Hz spike and wave complexes. Okay. So the treatment, as I already mentioned, they have very poor prognosis. Their refractory treatment, usually we need to give the ketogenic diet. Again, ketogenic diet is high fat and low carbohydrate diet. high fat and low carbohydrate is ketogenic diet, and the vagal stimulation, even surgical resection sometimes need to be done. If the patient is having this symptomatic Lennox-Gastaut syndrome, is having some cortical dysplasia, the focal cortical dysplasia, we call it as FCDs. If they are responsible for the seizures, post seizures, they may have reduced frequency, but complete elimination of seizures is very difficult in case of Lennox-Gastaut syndrome. Again, this is Beck's. So only one important MCQ. Remember, benign Rolandic epilepsy is the most common epilepsy in childhood. Okay, benign Rolandic epilepsy is the most common epilepsy in childhood. Usually occurs between the 2 to 13 years of age. Okay, benign Rolandic epilepsy or Sylvian epilepsy, you get the classical centrotemporal spikes. It is the most common epilepsy in childhood. Okay, having autosomal dominant inheritance. If you see the EEG, we as I already mentioned, the ones from the even odd numbers are from the left side, one from the even numbers are from the right side. If you see here, this is the FZ and CZ. These are the central region. So in this classical benign Rolandic epilepsy, we have the spikes in the central region. So this EEG is done in the sleep, showing the bilateral synchronous biphasic spikes followed by the slow waves in the centrotemporal regions. So classic thing is this benign Rolandic epilepsy having spikes in the centrotemporal region, predominantly in the central region. This is a benign epilepsy. Okay, this is the most common epilepsy in childhood, autosomal dominant inheritance. Again, this is a benign epilepsy. Next is the, as I already mentioned, patients who are having occipital lobe semiology. Whenever you deal with the seizures, you have semiology of frontal type, temporal type, and the occipital type. Occipital, the origin of epilepsy from the occipital focus, we have only two diagnoses. One is Penatopolis, one is the late onset childhood occipital epilepsy, that is Gastaut type. Just this is for the information. They will not ask you this occipital type of epilepsies. These are, again, you see this occipital region, there are the important spikes. You see the spikes which are originating in the right occipital region, predominantly P4O2 region. Okay, this EEG showing bilateral occipital spike and wave complexes with predominant in the right side. Okay. Next is the Dravet syndrome. Dravet syndrome is another important one. Severe myoclonic epilepsy. Dravet syndrome is also called as severe myoclonic epilepsy, and it is also called as severe polymorphic epilepsy of infants. I will tell when you should suspect Dravet syndrome. Dravet syndrome, important feature is the febrile convulsions. Okay, whenever in the stem of the question, if you are seeing febrile convulsions early onset, that is before the age of 1 year, and the febrile convulsions are of longer duration, and usually what happens in the febrile seizures is your GDCS occur at the spike of the fever. If you are having febrile seizures before the age of 1 year and they are not generalized, they are of focal type, and they are occurring at the lower temperatures, and along with this febrile seizures, you are having other type of convulsions like the myoclonic seizures or the absence seizures, other type of seizures. Then if you follow those patients after 1 to 2 years, if you get growth retardation, that is again cognitive decline, growth retardation, that is your Dravet syndrome. So important feature in case of Dravet syndrome is, Dravet syndrome patients usually have the febrile convulsions at a lower temperatures. They are focal type of seizures, occur usually at the lower temperatures, and along with the febrile seizures, we have multiple different types of seizures. And within 1 to 2 years, we get these Dravet syndrome patients have they'll develop the myoclonic jerks and also cognitive decline. This is your Dravet syndrome. It is again very important to recognize the Dravet syndrome. This is severe myoclonic epilepsy. So focus on this. Onset between 2 to 12 months of age. Early appearance of the convulsive seizures. Early appearance of the convulsive seizures with prolonged, that is 10 to 90 minutes duration, often lateralized. So they are often focal seizures, prolonged seizures, and they are related to the fever in 3 to 4. So 75% of the cases they have febrile convulsions, and myoclonic seizures usually occurs after the first year, that is during the second and third year of life. So important features are massive myoclonus, axial muscles are involved, so you get the falls, and all these seizures in the Dravet syndrome, that is febrile convulsions, myoclonus, they predominantly appear on the awakening, so there is a diurnal variation. And if you do the EEG, they are burst of the irregular polyspike waves. So just remember important points. Dravet syndrome is severe myoclonic epilepsy. The seizures are febrile convulsions which are prolonged. They are related to the fever in 75% of the cases. You get the massive myoclonus, and then there is a cognitive decline. Okay, there is a cognitive decline. If you do the EEG in Dravet syndrome patients, you get the polyspike waves and also the burst suppression pattern. What is the treatment of Dravet syndrome? Now there are numerous therapies coming up in Dravet syndrome. What is important for the exam? Stiripentol is a drug used in Dravet syndrome, and more recent thing is cannabinoids are also approved for the Dravet syndrome. So in Dravet syndrome treatment, along with the routine medications, you have to give along with this valproate and benzodiazepines, you have to give the stiripentol and even cannabinoids, and also treatment of the febrile seizures. So Dravet syndrome patients, one more important, they have the sodium channel, typical sodium channel mutations. Next is the Landau-Kleffner syndrome. This is another important one. You have to recognize this one. So all these epileptic syndromes, every epileptic syndrome has this one peculiar feature and the typical EEG finding. You have to pick up this. This Landau-Kleffner syndrome, it is also called as acquired epileptic aphasia. What happens is, you have a normal child up to 5 years, 7 years, and suddenly they present with the aphasia. That means they're not responsive to the parent, and they have no speech. So the speech output is absent suddenly. They're not responsive to the caregivers or the parents. They're absolutely normal till that age. So this is acquired epileptic aphasia, Landau-Kleffner syndrome. So important points are, typical age of onset is between 3 to 7 or 3 to 8. They usually peak in the 5 years of age. They present with this aphasia. So one important point you need to remember regarding this Landau-Kleffner is acquired epileptic aphasia, absolutely normal child presenting with the aphasia. And if you do the EEG, awake EEG is absolutely normal. You see the abnormalities only in the sleep EEG. That is the important point. Whenever you are ordering an EEG for a patient with epileptic syndrome or for any epilepsy, you have to get the normal awake EEG and also sleep EEG. Sometimes even you have to get the prolonged EEG. Okay, that is video EEG. So usually this Landau-Kleffner syndrome, if you follow the course of the illness, the EEG abnormalities will resolve during the adolescence, and even during the childhood, if you follow those patients, they present with this aphasia only partially controlled. They are not completely, even though EEG findings are changed over a period of time, the clinical symptomatology, that means the aphasia, the symptoms still persist even during the adolescence course. And along with this aphasia, these patients have the seizures, that is generalized or focal seizures. So whenever you see a patient of absolutely normal child presents with aphasia with an underlying focal or generalized seizures, think of Landau-Kleffner syndrome. Do the sleep EEG, you get this sleep EEG, you get this continuous slow wave sleep. So if you see the awake EEG, this is normal EEG. If you see the entire waves predominantly in the right side and also in the left side, this is continuous slow wave pattern. Okay. Next is the childhood absence epilepsy. Only few important points, also called as pycnolepsy. Ictal EEG shows 3 head spike and slow wave complexes. So they have a frequent typical absence seizures, and EEG showing 3 head spike and wave pattern. One point I want to say, typical and atypical absence. This is again frequently asked. Whenever you have abrupt onset and abrupt offset of a seizure, that is typical absence. Gradual onset, it is atypical. Again, this absence epilepsy seizures are very few seconds. They occur for very few seconds. If the absence episodes occur over a period of few minutes, that is again atypical. So this atypical absence episodes occur for over a few minutes, and they have a gradual onset. Whereas typical, they have a abrupt onset and abrupt offset. Generally, these absence epilepsy patients respond to the ethosuximide and valproate. Again, one more MCQ here. Usually less than 2 years, the drug of choice is ethosuximide. We should not give valproate because the valproate will cause the liver problems. So less than 2 years, we give ethosuximide, drug of choice in absence epilepsy, and more than 2 years, it is sodium valproate. This is the typical 3 head spike and wave pattern. Next important one is the juvenile myoclonic epilepsy. Again, 3 important features of juvenile myoclonic epilepsy. These patients have myoclonic jerks on awakening, and then these patients have typical absence seizures, and then these patients have atonic seizures. So these patients have typical bilateral myoclonic jerks on awakening, and they have generalized tonic-clonic seizures, and they have typical absence. So sorry, there are no atonic seizures. Atonic seizures, that is in LGS. So juvenile myoclonic epilepsy, 3 important points. They have bilateral myoclonic jerks on awakening, GTCS, and typical absence. Usually what happens is, I will tell you the clinical scenario. We have seen few patients of juvenile myoclonic epilepsy. These patients are absolutely normal till the age of 15, 17 years. They have initially the myoclonus. Myoclonus also, again, these juvenile myoclonic epilepsy patients, they give the typical history of myoclonus in certain regions. That is, both the proximal and distal muscle groups are involved in the limb, that is myoclonus, but they will describe the history of finger myoclonus. That means these patients initially have the clumsy hands. They give the history of drop attacks, like that means they have object falling from the drop initially over the few years, and then they have some absence episodes, and then they have typical generalized tonic-clonic type. Important feature is their cognitive part is absolutely normal. So these juvenile myoclonic epilepsy patients, it is important to recognize those patients. They have subtle myoclonic jerks, they have generalized tonic-clonic seizures, and they have typical absence seizures. If you do the EEG, they have spike and wave, polyspike and wave pattern. Again, 4 to 6 head spike and wave pattern is classical of JME, juvenile myoclonic epilepsy, Janz syndrome. Okay. This is the classical.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Excuse me, sir. If the meeting stops or abruptly it ends, so the participants can again click the link and join automatically. It may end. No need to worry. You can again click on that link and you can join. Okay, sir. You can continue.
Okay. So this polyspike and wave discharges, that is 4 to 6 heads polyspike and wave discharges, is classical of juvenile myoclonic epilepsy. Next is the Rasmussen syndrome. Rasmussen syndrome, only one important point. Whenever you see the focal seizures which are not responding to the medication, on imaging you have the hemiatrophy on one side. This is a classical of Rasmussen syndrome. Progressive hemiatrophy with lesser atrophy on the other side. The atrophy is also more pronounced in the perisylvian region. Here we will initially we give the different types of antiepileptic medications. We will give the steroids. Sometimes we have to give the IVIG. In resistant cases, we need to do the hemispherectomy. So Rasmussen syndrome patients presents with the focal seizures with complex, the focal seizures with focal onset motor seizures, and seizures start in one hemisphere and more pronounced in the perisylvian region. Treatment is by IVIG, corticosteroids, and resistant cases you have to do the hemispherectomy. Okay, so if you see this image, the left side you see the hemiatrophy. Okay, and also on the left side again you see this spike waves. That is the sharp and spike waves. So this is the entire syndromes. So I will just summarize once within the next 5 minutes, and then we go for some one-liners and drug of choices and some practice questions. So important is the neonatal period. Benign familial neonatal epilepsy, it is benign one. It will resolve on its own within 2 years. Early myoclonic epilepsy and Ohtahara syndrome. Important points: burst suppression pattern. You have to differentiate the burst suppression pattern between the two. Ohtahara syndrome, we have the longer burst and shorter interburst interval. Early myoclonic encephalopathy, we have shorter burst and longer burst interval. Ohtahara syndrome, we have structural lesions. Early myoclonic epilepsy, they have an underlying metabolic abnormality. Okay, I'm skipping all this. So those are the only important points. Ohtahara syndrome. This is as I already mentioned. Next is the West syndrome. Triad is, we have infantile spasms, developmental arrest, and hypsarrhythmia, intratracheal EEG pattern. Infantile spasms, developmental arrest, hypsarrhythmia, intratracheal EEG pattern. This is again very important EEG. You see in multiple exams. Whenever you see a bizarre EEG, chaotic pattern, large amplitude, with imaging showing the atrophy and with some hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy changes, that is hypsarrhythmia. Okay. Febrile seizures, only one important point: sodium channel 1A mutations. Penetrapolis syndrome and Gestalt epilepsy. Already mentioned, they are the only seizures having occipital focus. That is, they presents with some visual hallucinations, and some on the EEG they have occipital spikes. Okay. Next is the Lennox-Gastaut. Already mentioned, Lennox-Gastaut have the typical seizures. Typical EEG pattern is less than 2.5 hertz wave pattern, and the mental retardation. Okay, this is more common in males. Peak age of onset between 3 and 5. Lennox-Gastaut syndrome patients having more frequent seizures during sleep. Okay, this is the fast rhythms with polyspikes and slow complex seen in the Lennox-Gastaut syndrome. And Beck's, this is the most common epilepsy, Rolandic epilepsy, and Gestalt occipital spikes. Dravet syndrome, remember only one point: it is severe myoclonic epilepsy. They have prolonged focal seizures. Okay, Dravet syndrome, recent treatments are, that is stiripentol. Important point. Landau-Kleffner, again, whenever a normally developing child presents with an acquired aphasia with an underlying seizures, that is GTCS or focal, with an abnormal EEG pattern in the sleep, that is Landau-Kleffner syndrome. Okay. Are you able to see the screen?
Yes, sir, we are able to see. Now you can start recording, sir.
Okay, fine. So the lecture is almost complete. Now coming to the summary of the EEG one-liners. So in all the exams, this typical EEG findings are important to recognize the epilepsy syndrome. So the classical three-head spike and wave pattern is seen in.
Sir, please make your screen big.
Okay.
Slide so you can do big. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Now it's fine.
So the classical three-head spike and wave discharges are seen in absence seizures, and the poly spike and wave discharges, which I have shown in the previous in the discussion, that is 4 to 6 heads poly spike and wave discharges are classically seen in juvenile myoclonic epilepsy, that is Zan syndrome, and hypsarrhythmias, classic of West syndrome, and the slow spike and wave discharges, that is less than 2.5, classical of Lennox-Gastaut syndrome. And coming to this non-epileptiform discharges, this is just for the completion sake I kept. These are not seen in the, I mean, these are not epileptiform discharges, but it will show you the important underlying abnormality. That is periodic lateralized epileptiform discharges are classic of herpes encephalitis, and the periodic giant waves, they are classic of subacute sclerosing panencephalitis, and the periodic triphasic sharp waves, they are classically seen in many metabolic encephalopathies like hepatic encephalopathy and the CJD, that is Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, and the burst suppression. Burst suppression pattern is classically seen in anoxic encephalopathy. Okay, so these are the very important one-liners. Again, I repeat: three-head spike and wave discharges are seen in absence seizures. Poly spike and wave, that is 4 to 6 heads poly spike and wave discharges are seen in juvenile myoclonic epilepsy. Hypsarrhythmias are seen in West syndrome. Slow spike and wave, that is less than 2.5, that is classical in Lennox-Gastaut syndrome. And the non-epileptiform discharges, that is PLETs, nothing but periodic lateralized. Usually what happens is in herpes encephalitis the temporal lobe is affected, so discharges will come from that, that is periodic lateralized. So they are lateralized to the temporal lobe. What is periodic means, usually in the EEG description, whenever you have 6 waveforms, like whenever you see the sharp slow waves like that, if you, whenever you see this periodic is the pattern. So there are 3 types of pattern. One is the periodic, another one is the rhythmic pattern, and the spike and wave discharges. If you have the more than 6 waveforms repeating periodically, that is called periodic. That is periodic lateralized epileptiform discharges. Whenever you see the word periodic, you remember just ICU. Usually the ICU patients, the typical encephalitis patients, have these periodic discharges. Periodic lateralized epileptiform discharges, herpes encephalitis. Periodic giant waves, these large giant waves, they're classic of SSPE, subacute sclerosing panencephalitis, and the periodic triphasic waves, and they are seen in both the metabolic encephalopathies like hepatic encephalopathy and the CJD, that is Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. Next is the burst suppression pattern, anoxic encephalopathy. Next important area of MCQs is the drug of choice. So there are various seizures. This is again very important area. Febrile seizures. Whenever you get the febrile seizure episode, you give the intranasal or the rectal diazepam. That is the drug of choice. For the prophylaxis, you give the oral diazepam. So the for the episode of febrile seizures, drug of choice is intranasal or rectal midazolam. For the prophylaxis of febrile seizures, you give oral diazepam. And for the absence seizures, as I already mentioned, less than 2 years, you give ethosuximide. More than 2 years, sodium valproate. Usually, we avoid sodium valproate for the less than 2-year-old children because of the liver problems. Again, infantile spasm, we give the ACTH. This is again important area. In the West syndrome, in West syndrome patients, Lennox-Gastaut syndrome patients, they are very difficult to treat patients. But this infantile spasms are in the West syndrome, their response to the ACTH. We give the intramuscular injections of ACTH over a period of 2 weeks. We taper from the higher dose to lower dose over a period of 2 weeks. Intramuscular injections, that is ACTH. Again, this infantile spasms with an underlying structural abnormality, that is tuberous sclerosis, they typically respond to the vigabatrin. So infantile spasms, drug of choice is ACTH, but if the infantile spasms with the tuberous sclerosis, drug of choice is vigabatrin. Again, important MCQ for the vigabatrin is we get irreversible visual field defects. They are not reversible. Irreversible visual field defects are very classic of vigabatrin. So it is very difficult to treat the patients of infantile spasms with tuberous sclerosis. Next is the generalized tonic-clonic seizures. Drug of choice is sodium valproate. Status epilepticus, drug of choice is lorazepam. If the status epilepticus continues beyond 1 day, that is refractory, drug of choice is midazolam. There is another term called super refractory. Usually the seizures persist for more than 2 days, that is 48 hours. There you give the thiopenton. Okay. So the refractory drug of choice is lorazepam. Status is lorazepam. Refractory status is midazolam. And epilepsy related to the brain tumor, drug of choice is levetiracetam. Okay. And one more point here for the completion sake, I am adding epilepsy in pregnancy. Drug of choice is levetiracetam. Okay. In pregnancy, only 2 drugs are useful: levetiracetam and lamotrigine. the common drug we use, the sodium valproate, has a teratogenicity. Phenytoin carbamazepine has teratogenicity. Even lamotrigine has 1% teratogenicity. So the drug of choice is levetiracetam. If still not controlled, lamotrigine can be used. So only 2 drugs in case of epilepsy and pregnancy. So this completes the drug of choice. Again, I will repeat. Febrile seizures episode, drug of choice is intranasal or rectal midazolam. Prophylaxis of febrile seizure, oral diazepam. Absence seizures less than 2 years, ethosuximide. More than 2 years, sodium valproate. Infantile spasms, if at all, infantile spasms are given in relation to the West syndrome. The drug of choice is ACTH, that is intramuscular ACTH injections. And infantile spasms with the tuberous sclerosis, we get the vigabatrin tablet formulation, vigabatrin tablets, vigabatrin. Okay. And GTCS, sodium valproate, status epilepticus lorazepam, refractory status epilepticus midazolam, and epilepsy relation to the brain tumors, levetiracetam. Epilepsy with pregnancy, drug of choice is levetiracetam. Okay. Next, these are the practice MCQs. Just within 5-10 minutes, we will complete. A 8-year-old boy presents with the frequent staring episodes in the class. They just mentioned frequent staring episode. They didn't mention whether it's abrupt onset or insidious onset. Staring episodes, 8-year-old boy. More than 2 years, as I already mentioned, absence epilepsy, drug of choice is sodium valproate. If the same question, if they have given a 1-year-old child, 2 years old child, that is less than 2 years, drug of choice is ethosuximide. Okay. Here in absence, again, we see the typical 3-head spike and void discharges. Atypical absence, less than 3-head spike and void discharges. Okay. This is, I'm just mentioning some questions. Just think of diagnosis. A 12-month-old boy presented with a history of spells of truncal flexion and arm abduction. So he is describing about the spasm, that is truncal flexion and arm abduction lasting for about 2 to 3 seconds. As I already mentioned, epileptic spasm typical duration is 0.2 to 2 seconds. Okay, so here it is 2-second duration, one episode of truncal flexion with arm abduction. Most important thing is recurring multiple times in a day in a cluster. So whenever you think of epileptic spasms, you should search for the word cluster. So the clustering of these episodes, epileptic spasm, classic of West syndrome. Okay. So what are the various drugs used in treatment of JME? I'm just testing your knowledge over the last 1 hour. So various drugs used in JME, juvenile myoclonic epilepsy, they respond to the valproate, but other drugs, you may use levetiracetam, you may use topiramate, and even lacosamide. Okay. And what is the triad of Lennox-Gastaut syndrome? Lennox-Gastaut syndrome, as I already mentioned, you get the multiple seizure types, you will get the cognitive decline, and you get the less than 2.5 heads spike and void discharges. Mechanism of action of brivaracetam. Okay. Like levetiracetam, we have now got a new drug, that is brivaracetam. Again, for the completion sake, I have added this drug. Again, this is a potential new question. Brivaracetam is the similar to the levetiracetam. What is important thing is mechanism of action of levetiracetam is this drug will bind to the synaptic vesicle 2A protein. There is one protein called synaptic vesicle 2A protein. Like the same way, this brivaracetam also will act, but with 20 times more affinity. So levetiracetam mechanism of action, binding to the synaptic vesicle 2A protein, thereby reducing the discharge, thereby reducing the frequency of epilepsies. Brivaracetam is also, it is 20 times more higher affinity, 20 times higher affinity when compared to the levetiracetam to the synaptic vesicle 2A protein. Okay. What is the most common presentation of JME? As I already mentioned, bilateral myoclonus on awakening is the most common presentation of JME. What is the classical EEG pattern you see in JME? Just try to recall. JME classical EEG pattern is 4 to 6 heads, polyspike and void discharges. 4 to 6 heads, polyspike and void discharges is classical of JME. And what is the most common syndrome? This syndrome we didn't dealt with. I'm just asking you the question. What is the most common syndrome associated with focal seizures with the dyscognitive features? Okay, focal seizures with the dyscognitive in adolescents or adults. That is mesial temporal lobe epilepsy. Okay, where you see the hippocampal sclerosis. Okay, focal seizures with the dyscognitive features in adults. That is the most common syndrome associated with the focal seizures with the dyscognitive features in adults is, that is mesial temporal lobe epilepsy. What is the most common epilepsy in children? As I already mentioned, that is benign Rolandic epilepsy is the most common epilepsy in children. What is Lafora disease? Lafora disease is basically progressive myoclonic epilepsy. I didn't dealt with this disease because of this time. Just read about the Lafora disease. Important point is there is like Dravet is severe myoclonic epilepsy. This Lafora disease is a progressive myoclonic epilepsy. We have two syndromes in relation to this progressive myoclonic epilepsy. One is von Wright-Schlenberg syndrome, another one is Lafora disease. What is severe myoclonic epilepsy? That is Dravet syndrome. One more point. What is the treatment of Lafora disease? Treatment of Lafora disease, one important drug, jonicamide. Jonicamide is used in the Lafora syndrome. Okay, jonicamide is used in the Lafora syndrome. treatment of Dravet syndrome, that is severe myoclonic epilepsy, stiripentol is the important drug. Again, two important questions, last questions. What are the antiepileptics which causes prolonged PR interval? There are so many antiepileptics. The drugs which are having prolonged PR interval are lacosamide and eslicarbazepine. Like we have the carbamazepine, oxcarbazepine and eslicarbazepine, two congeners of carbamazepine. This eslicarbazepine have the prolonged PR interval. So lacosamide and eslicarbazepine have the prolonged PR interval. These are the new drugs. Perampanel, zonisamide, cannabinoids and stiripentol. What is perampanel? As the name itself, it is saying perampanel is it is approved for both the focal and generalized seizures. It is an AMPA receptor antagonist. See this one, AMPA. Perampanel, it is an AMPA receptor antagonist. This is basically the selective non-competitive AMPA receptor blocker. Selective non-competitive AMPA receptor blocker is perampanel. Zonisamide, as I already mentioned, it is used in Lafora disease, that is progressive myoclonic epilepsy. Cannabinoids and stiripentol, they both are approved in the Dravet syndrome. They both are approved in Dravet syndrome. So I think in 1 hour, I tried to cover almost all aspects of epilepsy. Along with the epileptic syndromes, I covered the typical EEG patterns, I covered the drug of choices and all the newer drugs. Okay. So I request you to
And also, sir,
and read about the various epileptic syndromes. So again, I'm mentioning, this is the take home message from today's discussion. Look at the age of onset, semiology of the seizure, the type of seizure, the progression of the disease. As I already mentioned, so see, Ohtahara syndrome, it progresses as West and then it progresses as Lennox-Gastaut, and then correlate with the EEG and imaging findings. Whenever you deal with the epilepsy syndrome, always look at the age of the onset. One more thing I forgot, family history. Age of the onset, family history, semiology of the seizure, type of the seizure, progression of the disease, and then associative developmental delay present or not, and then correlate with the EEG and imaging findings. You will come up with one diagnosis. Okay, I think you understand at least some part of this lecture. This is a complex thing because we have to integrate pharmacology, medicine, okay, various aspects, but you get so many questions from this discussion. Various epilepsies, drug of choice, EEG one-liners, and the semiologies, and from the image-based questions also you will get from this topic. So I request you to go back and read about the classic epilepsy syndromes and the EEG findings and the imaging findings, and make a note of these EEG one-liners and the drug of choices. Okay. Nigam, is it audible?
Yes, sir, it's clear. And sir, thank you so much for this nice slide. And you made everything clear about the syndrome and what should be used during pregnancy and differentiating them from each syndrome. It was a very nice session, sir. Thank you so much.
Wants to ask any questions, you can mail me. Okay. Happy to help.
Yes, sir. You can show them the first slide. Yeah. Yes, they can mail you. If you want to ask doubt now, you can raise your hand. I'll be unmuting and you can ask.
Yeah, we can have questions for about 5 minutes. No problem. They can ask the questions.
Anyone wants to ask? Okay, one Aishwarya raised hand. I'll be unmuting Aishwarya. Wait 1 second. Yeah, Aishwarya, you can ask now.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, Aishwarya. Yeah, you can ask now.
Sir, what are the drugs contraindicated in myoclonic epilepsy?
Yeah.
And
again, this is very important. I forgot to ask, what are drugs which are contraindicated in myoclonic epilepsy? Remember, phenytoin and carbamazepine. Phenytoin and carbamazepine will exacerbate the myoclonic seizures. Even lamotrigine also they have showed in the long run. If you use the lamotrigine for prolonged period only in isolation, they may exacerbate or worsen the myoclonic seizures. But important to remember is phenytoin and carbamazepine worsen the myoclonic drugs. That's why in all these myoclonic epilepsies we should avoid phenytoin and carbamazepine. This is a very important question I forgot to mention here. Yeah, phenytoin and carbamazepine.
You had told DD for progressive myoclonic epilepsy apart from Lafora. What was the second one?
That is Unverich-Lundberg disease. We have two progressive myoclonic epilepsy along with the Lafora body disease. Another one is Unverich-Lundberg disease. Lafora body disease, again, I didn't mention this Lafora body disease. Lafora body disease, how the diagnosis is very classic. You will get the skin biopsy from the axillary region where you see in the sweat glands the Lafora bodies, the classical polyglucosan Lafora bodies under the microscope. If you do the biopsy, the apocrine sweat glands, it is responsive to the jonicamide. Again, these progressive myoclonic epilepsies are difficult to treat seizures. There are two epilepsies, that is von Willebrand disease and Lafora body disease. And again, Lafora body disease, you have the classical EPM2A and EPM2B mutations. Even now the genetic testing for these mutations have got. You have to order specifically this whenever you suspect this Lafora body disease, EPM2A and EPM2B mutations, you can order and you can get the genetic testing. So the skin, you can get the diagnosis by the skin biopsy and the clinical semiology and the genetic testing. And newer drug, they are responsive to the jonicamide, somewhat responsive to jonicamide. Yeah.
Thank you,
Okay.
sir.
Again,
Okay,
any doubts you want, if you have any doubts, you can mail me, and we will come up with the next class soon. Okay.
If
Yeah,
anyone
is
wants to
audible?
ask doubt, can raise your hand.
Yeah.
I'll be unmuting. I think no one is there, sir. So we can. Okay, Madhuri. Madhuri wants to ask. Let me unmute her.
Yeah.
Okay,
Sir,
Madhuri, you can ask now.
can you tell epileptic spasm duration, sir?
Epileptic spasm is typically 0.2 to 2 seconds. Okay.
0.2.
0.2 to 2 seconds is epileptic spasm. This is given in a book called Penitopolis. You don't get in routine books. This is that book. Basically, you have only epilepsy syndromes. That's why I said this epileptic spasm detection is very difficult. That's why we don't know whether the child is having just a Moro spell or a child is trying to get up from lying down posture. So it is very important to recognize whenever these spasms occur in clusters, that indicates an underlying pathology. Okay, epileptic spasms occur in clusters. So each cluster, sometimes the spasms are like 20 to 50. So you get the jerks combined. So sometimes it is very difficult to recognize through the naked eye. So duration is very less, that is 0.2 to 2 seconds. Epileptic spasm.
Okay.
Okay, anyone wants to ask, or we can end here the session.
I didn't go depth into the EEGs, maybe beyond the scope of this discussion. We can have separate discussion on EEG, but for MCQ point of view, at least you remember the classical patterns. So we have only few patterns. Whenever you see the periodic things, we have the periodic giant waves you see in the SSPE, the periodic triphasic waves in case of CJD, that is periodic triphasic waves also seen in metabolic encephalopathies, and burst suppression you see in anoxic encephalopathy, and classical 3 hits pattern in case of absence, and 4 to 6 hits in case of juvenile myoclonic epilepsy. At least you remember the basic EEG patterns. Less than 3 hits is absence, less than 2.5 is Lennox-Gastaut, 4 to 6 hits is juvenile myoclonic epilepsy. Okay, I didn't go depth into the EEG findings. This is more for a neurologist to identify whether it's a spike or a slow wave or a sharp wave or a delta wave or a theta wave. Maybe not much needed at undergraduate level. Yeah.
Okay, any other wants to ask doubts, can raise your hand. I think no one wants to ask. If you are having doubt, also you can mail to sir, and also this session I will be uploading in M4PG website. I'll be sharing. So no need to, if you miss some points also, no need to worry. Under M4PG store, you can download. I'll be uploading sir's content by night or by tomorrow morning. You can download it. At the end, you can see here, I'll be uploading sir's. And if you are interested for the next session, you can also register, which is of anesthesia regarding capnography by Dr. Hitesh. If you are interested, you can register. It's on, I think, on 24th. Yeah.
Okay,
So
good night. Yeah, take care, guys.
Okay, sir.
Just go back and read this epileptic encephalopathies. Very high yield area. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, sir. We can stop the recording.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for the session.